Welcome to the Embodied Wisdom Podcast.
I want to start by asking you, what made you get into this crazy line of work?
Well, you've seen my story. I'm kind of a trauma poster child.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We'll get into that, I guess. But what got me here was I've always been committed to community and community work. I'm on the faculty of the Shift Network. I've taught shamanism. I was 35 years an organizational consultant, working in Europe and North America. So I've always been doing this kind of work. But it was about 10 or 12 years ago I met Thomas Hübl. I don't know if you know his work,
Mm-mm.
but he's an Austrian mystic, and he's on the leading edge of trauma and has been. He puts on a big trauma summit every year, and he's kind of started all these trauma summits. But he said one thing that I had been really interested because of teaching and doing the Shift Network. I was the host of the Shamanic Wisdom Summit for 8 years there and started that. And I was really interested in soul retrieval. What is soul retrieval? How do you lose a soul, and how to retrieve a soul? And then he just said this simple thing: we're swimming in a sea of trauma. And it was one of those, oh my God, that's the linchpin for everything. Whether it's climate change, war, loneliness, enslavement, fear, it's at the heart of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And it's what keeps us separate, and it's what keeps us in scarcity, and it's what keeps us, doing the same things over and over again, expecting different, outcomes.
Results. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at trauma, the easiest way to think of trauma is unfinished past. That
Yeah.
we carry our past into what I call aftertime. And when you have an argument with your partner or with your boss or something, and you leave, how could he have said that to me, after all I've done? And then the next day you're still fuming, and then 10 years later, I remember that time that he dissed me, you're carrying it.
Yeah.
We have these upsets, and we think what we're upset about is what we're actually upset, but it's something from the past that gets triggered.
So
And
deep.
we say, you make me so bad. No, it's something that happened maybe when you were 5.
Gosh, I love trauma so much. That was so beautifully said. We're just living in the sea of trauma, because trauma is just like a high state of negative emotion where a belief gets stamped onto it. And what I find to be interesting is that belief from early childhood just keeps coming up on every negative event. And my two dominant ones were, I'm unlovable and I'm not that important. And it's literally stamped onto every negative event in my life since childhood. So I find it to be so fascinating when we could find those nuggets of gold, which is those limiting beliefs, those life commands. I want to know, because we have similar histories where I came into this business, same as you, because I was struggling with all my childhood trauma that came bubbling to the surface when I became a wife and a mom, and I just couldn't function. I tell people I was like twitching out, like maybe close to like psychosis would be, which is what a lot of people experience. But what I find particularly fascinating is epigenetics.
Mhm. Yeah,
Do you dip
yeah.
much into epigenetics? I'd love
Oh,
your
of course.
take on that.
Yeah, of course. But let's back up just a little bit because we're talking about trauma, and most people actually talk about trauma and don't know what it is. So
Yeah.
I'd like to kind of define it for us a
Yeah.
little bit. So I did say, it's unfinished past, but it's much more than that. So first of all, trauma is not a disease, it's not a pathology, it's not a brokenness. It's an incredible intelligence of the nervous system that's been evolving for really millions of years.
Yeah.
And and the evolution has been that in an overwhelming situation, when we're just like, this is too much, the nervous system kicks in, it fragments us, takes that part, and it either turns into numbing or into tensing. And I say numbing and tensing because in my work, verbs are very big.
Yeah.
Because when you say I have tension or I have numbness, we turn it into an it. But it's actually happening. It's like your refrigerator's plugged in, it's keeping things cold, while your nervous system is plugged in and it's keeping things suppressed. So it takes a lot of energy to keep these things pushed down. So trauma is also not the thing that happened. And that's actually good news, because if it was the thing that happened, it would be very hard to
Couldn't
heal.
undo it. Yeah.
It's the response to the thing that happened. So when we're talking about trauma, we're not talking about what happened. We're talking about the way that we adapted to what happened. So that's really important to recognize, because otherwise we'd just be stuck with it. The other thing that's really important to know about trauma, typical therapy, cognitive therapy, will never touch trauma because it's somatic, it's emotional. It is not cognitive. And I think that's another important thing for people to know. So, as you know, my background, I'm a trauma poster child with all the things that happened. And I just name a couple of them. But I want to make sure that people realize that in my book, Traumatized: A Love Story, which I have here, Traumatized: A Love Story, the byline is healing the wounds that separate, alienate, and marginalize us. So, I started out in utero. My parents were at Pearl Harbor. My father was a fighter pilot, and my mother was actually the assistant to the commander of the U.S. fleets in the Pacific region. And so they were there for the bombing, right in the middle of everything. My father, none of the pilots got a plane off the ground. My father just his whole life went in, just like many of the people that were in Vietnam or Iraq or Afghanistan. It just collapsed inward. My mother was even worse. It was turned into mental illness. There were other factors there, but for the first 2.5 years, she would try to kill me. She, whatever was causing that. And then I found her hanging at 2.5. So that was kind of
You were 2.5 years old when you found her hanging,
yeah.
and you have memory of it?
I do. And in fact, in the book, if you read the book, you'll see that I went into a regression therapist and was able to, and just, went under, and the whole thing became clear, and it was crystal clear the whole day. It was interesting too, because my grandmother in the morning, it was just after Christmas, and my grandmother in the morning, I came downstairs 2.5, looking to play with my train set I got for Christmas. And I had evidently left the transformer on or something. And my grandmother was also pretty unstable. And she said, "You're going to burn the house down and kill us all." That was the day that my mother killed herself. So I hooked that up, that it was my fault, which is what we do a lot with trauma. And we can talk more about the intricacies of that too. But then it just had many, I had a number of stepmothers, a lot of abuse, abandonment, sexual abuse. Then I had this dog that was my whole life. And my parents at the time, I went through stepmothers, I had tied up my dog. And when I came home from school at 7, I found him hanging on the fence. So that was the second hanging. And then there were a number of deaths along that continuum. But the biggest, well, the dog was pretty big, but and my mother, but of course I was very young with that. But then in 1981, I had a 4-year-old. My wife was raped and murdered in Carmel, California, and they knew who it was, but they didn't have enough evidence to put him away. So he was been out on the street. So that created a lot of gossip and slander. Another woman that I was with told someone who took it on herself to just blast that all over our town. So I was living under suspicion and a cloud. They even made it more. It wasn't just I murdered my wife, but I was a child molester, and I was a womanizer. This was one person who her father happened to have molested her. And so this story got overwhelming after a while. So I'm a dual citizen. I went to Canada and for 7 years. And then I got a phone call about 2.5 years ago, and it was Officer Wilson from the Monterey Sheriff's Department, and he said, "Michael, we're reopening the case on your wife's murder, and we've got funds to do some DNA research." And so after a year, I came back immediately to Grass Valley, where I was living before. And they put the trial together. There was a lot of things that could have gone wrong, but luckily they found the rape kit, and they got a second piece of evidence. And the people who do the DNA analysis came back, and the results were that he did it. And the DNA is funny. The result was 1 in 276 quadrillion to 1 that it was him. That's 19 zeros, right? So it's pretty conclusive. And then he tried to appeal, and they just threw it out of court. So he's still in jail. So all of that time, I've been involved in spiritual work and growth, shamanism, in lots of meditation. And, I was an organizational consultant for 35 years, working in North America and Europe, worked for the European Union and a lot of big companies. Then I started I also got in, I was a 5 Rhythms teacher, which helped a lot. 5 Rhythms
What's
is
that?
5 Rhythms was created by Gabrielle Roth in the 60s at Esalen, and it's the mother of ecstatic dance. And it's states of consciousness, awakening states of consciousness through movement.
Oh.
So I brought that into organizations and many other things that I worked on. But it wasn't until really I focused on trauma after I really was interested in doing soul retrievals and got involved in all of that. And I went, these soul retrievals are great, but people go away and they just still have the same things. So that's not working. So that led me to really doing a lot of trauma work, studying with pretty much everybody in the field. And I started doing trauma integration therapy work, individuals, couples, and I do the thing that I love the most, Tammy. I really love working with groups because we were wounded in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And it just made so much sense to me. So I do groups of 12 to 15 people usually for 4 to 6 months. I do them online and I do them in person here in California. And that's amazing because when you begin to integrate trauma, and we'll talk about integration, but when you begin to integrate trauma, having a witness is really important. And the reason that is because in early childhood development, the way that we learn to self-regulate. So self-regulate, I mean to be able to control our emotions, to be able to stay centered in an emergency, to, just get along with people, basically. But it's very difficult to self-regulate if you didn't have a caring witness to co-regulate with you. We learn to self-regulate out of co-regulation. So if we weren't felt, seen, heard, held, or protected as a child, and that we really knew we were safe, then we're already into the trauma zone. So if you have the eyes of a loving mother looking in your eyes, that's how we individuate. That's how we get a sense of self. If we didn't have that, then we're already deeply into living through trauma. And it's interesting with all the big T traumas I've had in my life. And when people read my book, they say, I related to everything you said in here. I may not have had the same situations, but it was all the same kind of thing. Yes, what you said in the beginning. I don't feel loved. Feel isolated. I have to prove myself. I have to prove my worth by being a certain way. And we adapt to trauma by taking on different roles, like the helper or the fixer or the smart one or the problem
Yeah.
child. They're all adaptations from that early adaptation. Sometimes we become billionaires because of those adaptations. We have a few running countries right now that are highly traumatized. And
You don't think all of them are?
all of them, yes. But, well, we are all traumatized.
I
If it's not
mean, the whole,
individual
yeah.
trauma, it's relational, or it's familial, or it's ancestral, which is a huge aspect. You're talking about epigenetics. When you look at ancestral trauma and begin to take it apart, you see that 4 or 5 generations back from World War I, it's been passed on, passed on, and passed on. So epigenetics is a huge part of this. Um, yeah, I'm talking a lot because I get passionate about what
I
I
know.
do.
I love it. I love
You
it,
have some
Michael.
questions.
I love it, Michael, but I do want to go on the path of shamanism because to be honest,
Yeah.
it's one of those vague things that I'm not really clear on. So I'd love to kind of get into the ones that because I had the same experience as you. I tried all the things on the path, but it wasn't until I started to dig into my own personal trauma that I started to see identity shifts
Yeah.
because I got the picture of, oh, my identity was just shaped by trauma. So if I can neutralize the traumatic events, then I get to reshape myself, much like the clay. And so that's what I found to be true for me. And that's the work that I really do with my clients. But I'd love to really talk about the ones because you probably, like me and many others, we went probably down the longest route. And I like to give people the shortcuts. Like, hey, you don't have to take the long route that I took. You can do a much quicker route. And that's really what I want to find and focus on in this time together is let's give them the shortest shortcut that they have, or at least set them up to be like, start here.
Yeah.
Because I agree with you. We're all walking around like living trauma centers, right? Like no one's got a regulated nervous system. I find it so very rare that people have that 0 point neutral in their field, right? They're kind of like bouncing around, vibrating, getting all crazy. But I want to let people know the shortest route to getting their nervous system calmed and to deep diving into their trauma. Where do they go first?
Hmm.
I just
So
said
let's talk
five
about
million
what you what.
things. You get to
No, it's
organize
all
that.
good. It's all good. I can carry that. First of all, I want to talk to speed. So you're looking for a fast track, and that is a trauma symptom.
Yes.
We want to go fast so we don't have to feel the pain, the fear, the anxiety that is part of trauma. So the first thing in trauma, soften, slow down,
Ooh, I
slow down.
love
I have to
that.
tell myself all the time, Michael, slow down. What's happening in your body? What are you feeling in your emotions? Most of us have become numb to our body, which I was lucky to meet Gabrielle. I've been dancing for 50 years now. It kept me young. Um, but we have to be able to feel our emotions and feel into it. So trauma work is the end of someday. What I mean by that is that we're always trying to get over past the trauma to the ideal place.
Mm.
And that's what keeps us stuck.
Oh.
We need to slow down and be with the icky shadow, yucky
Oh.
stuff. I know,
That
it's
hits us
horrible.
that hits us hard, Michael. You know, we don't want to sit with this pain. And it's so funny that as I say it, like I experience the same thing with my clients. Like, get me to the place where I feel healed. And yet I find myself like, when am I going to get past this next layer of the damn onion? It's like there's always another
Yeah.
layer.
But see, that's a trauma statement. When am I going to get past this?
Yeah.
It's really being able to slow down enough to feel those things that keep us running, keep us going past, keep us separate. So
Mm.
there's a lot in what you asked. I could go into shamanism, but I'll just say that a lot of people look at shamanism as kind of airy-fairy, new age stuff. But shamanism is the oldest spiritual practice on the planet. Um, and pretty much every religion took things from shamanism. Um, and so it's an animistic uh, spirituality. In other words, it looks at that everything is alive in the universe, and that everything is movement, that we're movement. So right now I'm movement, you're movement over here. So movement is meeting movement. Now, to be a grounded, I don't want to say non-traumatized, but to be able to really connect with each other. The first thing to recognize is that you're in Phoenix, I'm in Grass Valley, California, right? So there's distance between us. You're over there, I'm over here. And I could look at, somebody close to me, and it would be that distance. I feel the distance, or I'm numb to it. That's possible too. But on a much more real, way, actually you're right here and show up in my nervous system, and I'm over there and I show up in your nervous system, and the capacity I have for feeling myself is my capacity to feel you. It's the circumference of my ability to actually feel connected to you and feel you. So it's non-local, it's a wave, it's not a particle. So we are connected through our nervous system. And we don't think that way. We think in two-dimensional. We project on people, and we project from the past. But if I really, Tammy, I sleep outside during the summer. I love sleeping under the stars. And we just had a full moon, and you look up at the moon and you say, God, that moon is so beautiful. I love just lying here under the stars, seeing the moon, and what a beautiful moon. But what I rarely think about, not me, but what most people rarely think about is the impact that that moon is having on me, and the oceans, and the tides, and my moods, and the water in my body. And all living things are greatly impacted by that. But that's no different than you or I. We have this like sense of self, but we don't think about the huge impact. So something that's really important, I think, to talk about, and again, we're doing jazz here, so we just jump into that, is that we barely touch the potential of our ability to connect. We live in a world that's separated because of trauma. Trauma separates people and keeps us distant. It also creates a sense of scarcity, not just of money, but scarcity of time, scarcity of good people, scarcity of friends, scarcity of all kinds of things. So those are two of the main symptoms. Another one is a break in space-time, a break in our understanding of time. So what that means is that, I kind of said it in a different way earlier, but for the most part, we take our past and we think we're going from the past to the present to the future, but that's not accurate. Actually, for the most part, we're going from the past to the past because we've filed our past into our future. And when we are there, we're continually looking at what shaped my past. So I talk about my partner or my mother or my child or my relationship. So I do a lot of work. I teach a course called Relational Intimacy. It's more about relationship with myself than anything else. So the difference, the thing that's important to recognize, first of all, those are all nouns. I talk about my relationship. Well, how do I know my relationship? How can I know my relationship? Oh, there's only one way. I look to the past. And then those actions get put in front of me and I continue. And the more I'm with somebody, I in relationship workshop, I talk a lot about living side by side versus relating. because relationship is a noun, relating is a verb. We're constantly new. So if I'm in a relationship with you and we've been together 10 years, say, and I wake up and I go, oh, there's my partner. Honey, could you brush your teeth? I mean, it's kind of like, you know how she is. She's going to get up and make coffee, or he's going to get up and make coffee and do this routine. But what if I woke up in the morning with a sense of not knowing? And I look over and I go, whoa, who is this person that I'm laying next to? What amazing things could happen in our life today. I don't know you, and I'm going to spend the rest of my life every day trying to figure out who you are. Which relationship would you rather have?
Hmm.
Hmm.
I'd rather have the one that never changes.
Yeah, right.
Kidding.
We keep having the same argument year after year, day after day, But that's what happens is, so when I integrated trauma is presence. Unintegrated trauma is destiny. So I am bound by my trauma to do the same thing over and over and over forever until I meet that trauma. I greet it, I welcome. You know the Rumi poem, Guest House? All the sorrows, invite them in, all the hardship. Invite them into your house. They may tear everything apart and throw it, but they're there to teach you something. That's the
Yeah.
essence of that
So
guest house
true.
poem.
And when you
Yeah.
get to that place with your trauma where you're like, oh, I totally know why I picked this lifetime. I know why I picked these traumas. Like that's the point where I'm at now. And I know it takes some work to get to that place where you're like, oh no, wait, like I chose all of this.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
Um, it's that place where you can invite it in without judgment, where you just get to look at it and be like, oh, I see you. Right? It's like there's no judgment there. It's just all love.
Yeah, I don't know about I chose all of this. I
That's
think
where I
is I
stand.
choose this because I chose all this makes it look like that was your root cause. But some of your trauma is coming from many generations back. It's not a matter of uh, the causation is when I allow myself to feel it and choose, yes, I say yes to this. I'm not trying to get to the other side. I'm not trying to get to the ideal place. I have to be with what's there and choose that. So the choice is really in choosing what's occurring, no matter how horrible or overwhelming it is. Dealing with our shadow and our shame, we we don't want to go there. Who wants to go there? The shadow is the icky stuff that we don't want anybody to know, or certainly we don't want to tell anybody about it, but we don't even want to touch it. But that's where the healing comes in, is allowing ourselves to open. And we do it, titration. We do it a bit at a time. Titration is from a chemistry thing where you pour an acid into a base and you just put a few drops so it doesn't blow up. So in trauma work, we have to titrate the work that we do. That's why my groups are 4 to 6 months long, because you have to first build safety and create a safe container for, especially if you've got 15, 18 people. I go up to 18 people maximum
Hmm.
in the group. So we create a safe container, or at least safe enough to feel the things that we don't want to feel. And
Hmm.
that's where the choice comes from. It's not that that yes, much was handed down, but we think of also futures out there, but future actually is a heightened state of presence. A heightened state of presence is what creates the potential and the possibility for a new future, for an evolutionary jump in what it means to be human.
Hmm.
Even breaking any habit is an evolutionary move, because a habit is a crystallized structure in our body. And so when we can overcome is not quite the right word, but when we can make friends with in a way that we no longer have that addiction, then we actually create more space. Now, space is really important in trauma work, inner space. Inner space is the paper that the book of life is written on. If we don't have space, we can't write a new story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really important to pay attention to what's happening in my body, you know. So you wanted a method. I'm going to give you my method. Um, it sounds very simple. It is not simple. So it's a three-part integration process. So the first thing is that I get into a state of presence. What does that mean? That means I slow down, I soften, I pay attention to what's happening in my body. I pay attention to what's happening outside too. So often we're either inside or outside, but I pay attention to both. And I ground myself. I get a sense of being grounded. I slow my out breath down and I allow myself to soften. And that's presencing. That's the first stage. So meditation, contemplation, prayer, all very good. Resourcing ourselves like walks in nature or taking time out, slowing down, all of those help us to deepen our ability to do presencing. Again, it's a verb. I'm big on verbs, you might have noticed, Tammy.
Mm-hmm.
So the second step then, when I've grounded and brought myself into a state of presence, is witnessing. So I raise the resolution of my awareness. So now I begin to really search inside my body. Can I feel my liver? Can I feel my kidneys? Can I feel my heart and my lungs? Can I raise my awareness? It's like zooming in with a microscope or a telescope. Then I become more and more aware, and I begin to feel the flow of the movement, of the energetic movement through up through the ground, through me, from the vertical, from my soul's, entry into the body, horizontally from feeling other people. So I'm raising the resolution and I'm witnessing that. I'm allowing myself to see, oh, I was just triggered over something someone said. It reminds me of me when I was 3 years old, or, so start to get information when I really begin to look deeply. And then the third step, which is the really hardest step, is embracing. I put my arms around it. I hold it. I allow it to be there. And I make friends with it.
Do we all do this to ourselves, or you're talking about you hold them?
I'm a mirror. I hold up a mirror is what I do.
Okay.
No, you do your own integration work. I don't integrate people. You integrate it. All I do is create a safe space.
I just didn't know if it was you holding them or them holding themselves.
Well, I do hold them, but we're trying to get back to wholeness. And so it's really the work that only you, only me, only the person who's dealing with the trauma can really, and it's not even doing an integration. Doing is in the way of integration. It's more an access by presencing and being with. It automatically, the body knows how to heal. Look, I cut my finger and it bleeds. And I put a Band-Aid on and a scab forms and it heals. The whole body, the whole system, the nervous system works like that. Everything in our body is designed. But trauma creates inflammation, which comes from stress. 60 to 90% of all illness is stress related. 60 to 90%. But we talk about stress and we don't even know what that is. You'll say to me, oh, I'm so stressed. I've got so much on my plate. I've got all these shows to do and my husband and children. And I go, oh, yeah, well, you should see my life. I'm really stressed. So it's almost a competition of who's the most stressed. But what does it mean to be stressed? What it really means is my current capacity is insufficient to meet the challenges that are in front of me. So it's an issue of capacity. How do I build my capacity? That's what I help people do. I help them to create more inner spaciousness and integration so that more life can be held in the cup. Literally our cup, the body, our cup gets bigger. It can hold more life. And right now, with all the things that are happening in the world, people's cups is shrinking because there's so much fear, there's so much anxiety, there's so much not wanting to see what's happening. but we need to do the opposite. Oh, that's cute. I love it.
Ouch. Ouch. My cats feel the energy when it gets really potent and powerful in this chair. They feel the energy and they like have to be in on the
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah, I know. My dog's sitting right here.
Um, yeah, that kind of takes me into where I want to go, which is like the state of the world. I really believe that we're getting at the place where people they're recognizing that it's trauma. They're recognizing that that something is not working out so well. I think the potency or the intensity of the energy on the planet is sort of like shaking people awake right now. At least this is the way I perceive it. And they're no longer able to ignore these deep, painful issues within their vehicle.
Yeah, I agree.
And so here they are reaching out for help now. Now they're into this kind of stuff where, 20 years ago, this was not all that common to hear about. Someone like you doing your work for 50, like that wasn't super common. But all of a sudden in the past 5 years, I'd say significantly since 2020, or maybe this is just my experience, people are waking up and they're like, well, things are not right. And they're looking inward more than ever before. So when you take a temperature of the world right now, what do you think is going on? And what do you think the next step is?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll remind you of the subtitle of my book, Healing the Wounds That Separate, Alienate, and Marginalize Us.
Hmm.
So, yes, I do think there's a great awakening happening, and people are more and more aware of trauma. I also know that it's heating up the opposite side, the people who don't want to feel the trauma, that are getting more and more reactive and dangerous. So both are happening at the same time. Um, you know, I say about my work, I'm healing the world one nervous system at a time. So there's 4 billion people, so I don't know how, but we need a lot of people doing this work or being open to doing the healing. Um, I think it's really important that we learn about global social witnessing, that rather than turning away, there's so many stories about Nazi Germany. When the people saw what was going on, they'd peek through the window, but they would stay quiet or ignore or pretend it wasn't happening. I think we're in a stage like that could be a whole nother situation similar to what happened and maybe even worse. So that's a possibility. Um, so every time we do our work, whether it's individual trauma, ancestral trauma, familial trauma, every time we do that, it feeds the culture. It feeds the collective. So the collective is influencing us, and the only way to deal with that is to do our personal inner work. So part of my personal journey, besides meditation and a lot of other things that I do very early in the day, is global social witnessing, so that I don't turn away. So that I look at Gaza, those are human beings. I look at Sudan, those are human beings. Russia and Ukraine, I really look into and feel that those are real people. Those are, people that are dying. And I let myself feel it, and it creates more space. You can only do it to your capacity. I have a pretty big capacity for holding trauma. So in some ways, all the big traumas I've been through, and I only named a couple of them, have helped to create more space to hold. And so I think that's our work, that we really need to focus not in an individualist way. And I think individualism is something we might want to talk about here, versus individuation, which we kind of mentioned before. But in order saving the world is not going to be going out and yelling and screaming at people. I'm not saying people shouldn't demonstrate or do things like that, but I was very active for many years in the climate. My radio show started around climate and social justice and spiritual fulfillment was basically what the show was about. But and I covered all the climate conferences all over the world. I went and out of my own pocket covered them for years. And all the blame and all the self-righteousness just keeps everything stuck. And so what we really need to do is not to agree with, but learn how to disagree, but still recognize that they're human beings that are probably acting the way they're acting because they're traumatized. And to be able to listen instead of, I talked about levels of listening. So, the level that most of us operate in relationality is projection. It's two-dimensional. It's just like watching a movie. I look at you and it's just like a movie. It's a nice movie. You're a nice looking movie, but I don't have any real connection with you, right? Mm-hmm. So then I move to, a more empathic, more three-dimensional way of seeing you. And I go, oh, there's a real person over here and I can hear what she's saying and I can respond. It's right on the border, still a little bit two-dimensional, but more three-dimensional. But then I begin to bring in my body and be embodied. This moves us into four-dimensional. Now I can feel you feeling me, feeling you, and the space between us. That, even if you were, spouting things that were so much against everything I believe, I could still stay with you. I could still feel you. I could still listen. And a lot of the problem with trauma is we never felt heard. We never felt listened to. We never felt held or honored. We never felt safe. And so we kept going fast. And the faster we went, the more further we got away from being able to feel our emotions and feel our body. So that's my response to that. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's so much. That's so much. I feel that in my body because
let's take a breath. Tammy, let's take a breath. Let's take a breath together for all of our listeners. Okay, just soften. Slow down. Let your out breath be a little longer than your in breath. Feel how connected you are to the earth. And feel me feeling you. Can you feel me feeling you?
Every time you say that, it makes me laugh. Because it reminds me of a song, Michael.
What's that?
I can't think of the song, and I can't sing the lyrics because it'll just make me laugh. But every time you say that, it makes me laugh a little bit. No, because
that's good. You see what I'm saying, though? Even
yeah,
in the middle of this, and I really
that
invite
strong presence
to do that. Yeah, that softening, slowing down, feeling my body, feeling my emotions, or noticing that I can't feel my emotions, that my body's numb. That's as important as thinking that I can feel it. I have to be where I am. And we're trying to change things from the place that we want to be instead of the place that we're at. And it has to come from where we are, not from where we want to be.
No, you had me in a full trance. I was fully hypnotized. I'm not joking. I was like, what is this guy doing? I'm fully in a trance. I think that it's so important because sometimes, we're taught in the spiritual world that, this distinction between, yes, there's you and I, we're one, but we're also separate. We're also a separate spark of the divine, even though we're all of the same lattice of creation, so to speak. And so that confuses me a little bit whenever I think about, okay, you and I are separate, but we're really one. What the F does that mean?
Okay, that's a great question. I love that question. I mentioned it earlier, the difference between individuation and individualism. So individuation means that I had the opportunity to either be felt, seen, heard, held, protected, and adored as a child. Or I learned through practices and work that I was able to receive that. So I individuate, I become what you're calling a separate self. but actually it's not really a separate self. I become more attuned to my own body, which means I have more capacity. It's like the moon. I have more capacity to feel you. And so this thing about the New Age, we're all one, is a real spiritual bypass for most parts. But this is much deeper than bumper stickers. So I need to individuate so that I actually can recognize the not intra connection between you and I. Interconnection, people talk about interconnection a lot. That means between us. Intra means within us. So when I can really connect with you in a way where I'm feeling you and you're feeling me feeling you, then there's this different kind of sense. I'll tell you a story about my wife that was killed. We used to do a lot of work together, personal, spiritual work. And we used to do this thing called a be with. And one day we were working on impeccability. So we were cleaning our Victorian with toothbrushes in the kitchen, right? And just making everything, it was just a practice of consciousness, we were paying attention to what we were doing and cleaning. And then we decided to do a be with. A be with is when we sit across from each other and we look into each other's eyes and we breathe and we ground and we just be with each other and just sit together for 5 minutes or so and allow ourselves to do that. So one day we were doing this on the kitchen floor and with a pillow, each sitting on a pillow on the kitchen floor. And we both had the same experience in the same moment. And that was that she experienced herself looking through my eyes into her eyes, and I experienced looking through her eyes into my eyes. And it was freaking overwhelming. It was so like, whoa, what the hell was that? And it was transcendence. So subject-object transcendence is how we begin to recognize the deep intra-connection between us. So there's no longer I'm an object, you're a subject in separation. So when I transcend that, I have this experience of such deep connection. And I practice that with the moon and the stars at night. When I'm lying in bed, I'm practicing that. I practice it with my dog. I practice it with the grocery clerk. I'm practicing it with you. If you haven't noticed, I'm practicing that with you, that kind of sensing into where's she going, what's she feeling now, how's she doing, is she with me? Yes, she's very present, she's here, she's listening, she's connected to me. So that's when we're talking about oneness. It's not a bumper sticker. It's a practice. It's the if you want the essence of spirituality, it's very simple to me. Not two. That's spirituality. Not two. That there's no separation between you and I. There's no separation from me and nature around me. There's no separation from culture. There's no separation from the rocks and the trees around me. I am that. And that's a practice, recognizing, when I walk in the forest, I'm feeling the rootedness of the trees and it roots me. It grounds me. When I'm laying on the beach watching the waves, I am the waves. I'm feeling them move through my body. And literally, you can feel the movement of the waves in your body. So that's a practice you wanted practices. That's a really important practice. Now, the other side of that is individualism, which is killing us, which is at the heart of everything that's wrong about the world. We have a society that wants to be like I don't watch TV, but there's those people, that family that everybody wants to be like.
Kardashians.
Kardashians, yes. Everyone wants to be like that, or like, some big star and everything. And it's like, it keeps us from being vulnerable, from being our true self, from being real with each other. And it keeps us separate. And it's really individualism. And I could spend the whole hour talking about that, but I just want to note that keeps us separate. that sense of I want to be better than or as good as, or I'm comparing myself. If you compare yourself, you'll usually come up short anyway. So quit.
Quit doing that.
Notice how much you do it.
I the further along I get on my journey, I used to really want the things, right? The car, the
Yeah.
house, the bigger, the better. And then as I continue on my journey, I'm like, I would give up all that for myself just to spread things even, like just to have that idea that there's no human that has to go without food or a roof over their head or, that kind of thing. Like when we get to the level, the entire earth, when we get to the level where we see everyone as our brothers and sisters, as an extension of that which we are. And it's not about getting the better car, it's not about getting the bigger house, but it's about how do we even this out so that everyone has all their needs met.
Yeah. Yeah.
That would be so beautiful, wouldn't it,
And
Michael?
like I said, the second major side effect of trauma is a sense of scarcity, not enough. And so
Yeah.
we're always trying to get enough. But if we know that we're already enough, then, and my friend Lynn Twist, I don't know if you know her, the Soul of Money. She's an amazing, amazing person. Worked with Mother Teresa and Desmond Tutu,
Really?
all kinds. Yeah, look her up. Lynn Twist is a phenomenon. But one of the things she's done is change our perception around money, and and I love a very simple thing that Lynn often says: "What we appreciate appreciates. What we appreciate appreciates." So gratitude is really the substitute for scarcity.
Mm,
When we can tune in, like you say, when we can tune into being grateful for, I'm grateful for the flowers here. I'm grateful for my, place in nature. I'm grateful to have an opportunity to meet you and spend some wonderful time together. I'm grateful for my dog. I keep a gratitude journal. It's very important, I think, for us to practice gratitude, and that allows us to live in abundant where we're surrounded by abundance. It allows us to live in an abundant world. But if you're in scarcity and scratching and trying to get to something, then you're being run by your trauma.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, but we gotta end it there because we're already at the top of our time. Michael, dang it.
It's been such a delight to be with you. Let me just say
Where did the past hour go?
Let me just say that if you want to get a hold of me, welloflight.com, welloflight.com, you can set up a short, if you wanted to become a client or something, you set up a short call with me. There's new workshops happening all the time right now. Buy my book. This is a great book. Everybody I know that has read this book has said, I see myself in everything that you've written, even though I'm talking about major trauma.
Hmm,
Traumatized, a love story. It's on Amazon. It's on sale right now, I think. So a good time to
to
go over
grab
and
that
look
book.
on it. And yeah, yeah. So
Well, it's
yeah.
been such a pleasure having you, Michael. You
Uh,
are so beautiful inside and out, and I thank you so much for your devotion to your work and
mm,
what you are bringing to this world. You're just an amazing being. So thank
no.
you for what you're doing.
So are you, and thank you for what you're
Thank
doing.
you. Thank you.
We're partners in this.
We're partners in this. Well, thank you, Michael. You have a fabulous evening and a good weekend, and we'll stay in touch.
Thanks. I love that. Much
Yes.
love to you and many blessings.
Much love, Michael. Bye.
Bye bye.